Team Maggie's Dream was something that her mom really started up, to where we raise money and we award grants to young men and women, really at the start of their cancer journey, to help offset some of those costs of the fertility preservation.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your fearless host, Angie Scott.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. If this is your first time discovering us, I'm so glad you're here. This is a podcast with a mission to inspire, connect, and empower other women anglers and outdoor adventurers through sharing your amazing stories with others. I hope we've been doing a good job of that so far, and this week's episode is hands down no exception. This week, I'm very honored to welcome a fellow Stealth Rod Holders field team member, DeLana, to the show. Erica has been on my radar since I joined the Stealth field team, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to feature her on this week's episode. Erica recently hosted a fishing tournament that is near and dear to her heart, supporting her friend Maggie's charity to help raise money for young adults going through cancer treatments, so that when they beat this horrible disease, they might still have an opportunity to have children. The organization is called Maggie's Dream, and you'll hear all about it on this episode. We also talk about a new product coming out from Stealth Rod Holders that both of us are super excited about. It's a new drop-in mount for their QR1 and QR2 rod holders that's going to work perfectly for me on my new Key West 230 Bay Reef Bay boat. These new drop-in mounts will be available on their website very soon, so be sure and stay tuned to stealthrodholders.com. Alright, prepare to be inspired by the one and only multi-dimensional female angler, DeLana. Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. So, full disclosure, as we're recording this episode, it's pretty early in the morning, and Erica, you've got an hour head start on me, so if you hear some sipping coffee during this, just know it's a necessity.
Hey, I grabbed a cup right before we got on.
All right, awesome. Well, we were going to do this via video, but I'm currently flooded in on Percy Priest, and Wi-Fi is out at the marina, so that makes it a little bit challenge to do video, and that's also why I don't have the new Lance Truck Camper Mobile Podcast Studio with me right now, but it's safe and sound indoors because we had a little freeze last night on top of everything else, and it's not winterized, so just crazy spring weather in Middle Tennessee. But all that said, I'm happy to welcome DeLana to the show. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
So I want to kick this off with, we're both associated with Stealth Rod Holders and on the field staff team, and along with your husband Drew. And I thought I would start by asking how you first came across these amazingly innovative rod holders. In my opinion, the best ones on the market, and the people behind them are amazing to boot.
Yeah, no, I'll totally echo that opinion. As soon as we found out about Stealth, we immediately switched all of our holders over to them. We boat as well as kayak, so all of the holders on the boat became Stealths. We use the QR2s on the boat for freshwater and saltwater fishing, and then on the kayaks, we use the QR1s with their dual point kayak rail mounts. So we're complete converts, and we found out about them about 2 years ago. Just through local connections. Captain Mac or Mac Farr is on Lake Lanier, which is our home lake. And Mac became associated with Stealth just through talking with Jason and Carrie, the owners. And he and I were talking one day, and I saw that holder, and I was like, Mac, tell me about this. And he went through the spiel on it, showed it to me in action. And from there, it was like, I got to have these. So that's it's a great product.
Yeah.
It's one that's been really helpful to us.
And so the difference between the QR1 and the QR2 is the QR2 is for larger reels.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, the larger, so we put that on the boat because we do a lot of striper fishing on Lake Lanier, but then we'll also head down to the coast for snapper and grouper. And the rod size on those, they tend to have like a thicker rod butt, the diameter of them. Mm-hmm. And so the QR2s, the little cam system that's on it, is just better suited to really grip those tight and to give you that cam release action with the larger butts. And then the QR1 is going to be more of your typical freshwater fishing rods, your bass rods and reels. Mm-hmm. I guess catfish rods, depending on how beefy your catfish set up. But the QR1s have been perfect for us for the kayak, and they're going to be like your general freshwater fishing, mm-hmm. works for 90% of rods if you're freshwater fishing.
Cool. And I don't know, they've got a new rod holder that's coming out soon that I'm really excited about since I've switched over from a pontoon to a bay boat, but a really cool system that just fits right in those drop-ins that they have on the bay boat. So I'm really excited about that.
Yep, I've been hounding Carrie about those because we had we got a new boat this past fall, and just really trying to keep it kind of sleek on top. And we really like the removable rod holder concept for that reason. You can pop them in when you're ready to fish, but take them out if you're just out on the boat hanging out or with family and friends. Mm-hmm. So the new gunnel drop-in holders that they've got will make that even better.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm really excited to see those.
Well, cool. So much like myself, it sounds like you're a pretty versatile angler as far as targeting different species. I'm originally from Minnesota and grew up fishing for walleye, and that kind of my passion for fishing is just the fight. I just love the fight. And walleye, they put up a pretty good fight. I love the toothy fish, but unfortunately the lake I'm on here in Middle Tennessee, Percy Priest, does not have walleye. So I kind of had to do some learning and exploring when I got down here to find out what's the hardest fighting fish in this lake. And I quickly found out that it's the striped bass or the hybrids. And I would love to get to a point where I can really target those fish. I took a guide out here few summers ago now. It's been, it was actually I think it was July 3rd, so right in the middle of the summer, but we were trolling for those stripers deep, and it's quite a process. You have to catch your bait, and then you got to keep them alive, and he had downriggers on his boat to get that bait deep enough, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can manage all this. But talk a little bit about chasing those striped bass and hybrids. Are there hybrids as well in Lake Lanier?
Lanier does not have hybrids, okay. But we've got a lake about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 from us, Lake Alatuna, that's got striped bass, hybrid bass, and white bass.
Gotcha.
Here on Lanier, we've got striped bass, and then we've got some white bass as well. They're just not as common in numbers. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things where every captain you go out with, every just striped bass angler you go out with, they're going to have little modifications for maybe what the girl before that was doing it and telling you about. We're all going to do things a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. We're fortunate and maybe a little bit spoiled here on Lanier that we've got 4 really awesome bait shops that actually stock live bait.
Oh, nice.
So you can just roll up to them in the morning and fill your tanks and go hit the water. But you do have a lot of guys run oxygen on their boats. We don't. We just, our bait have lived fine just running an aerator in the tank. But you got to keep the water really clean and take care of them. They like a little bit of salt in the water. It helps their scales stay on. But we'll fish the live bait that we typically use are blueback herring and shad. Okay. Depending upon the type of year, we might use some trout, but it's fun. Right now is a really, really fun time of year on Lanier because the larger striper are all running up rivers. They're going to spawn. So now's the time of year. You may or may not have a high number bite day, but it's the best time of year to stand a chance of hooking into a really big fish.
Cool. Very cool. And so do you mostly troll for them, or how do you typically target them?
We're typically trolling. Right now is definitely trolling time of year. We'll put the trolling motor on, I'm going to say 0.7 is like an average speed. And it's really kind of this, we call it free lining, where we've got line counter reels, and we'll just get a small hook, like a little circle hook, and put it through the nostril of a herring, basically, and just let them out behind the boat to where there's either maybe a small pinch weight or maybe no weight at all. And you just got, maybe 150 feet of line out behind the boat, and you're just kind of pulling it along. And we'll run spreads. We don't get crazy with it. My husband and I will have, maybe 6 rods in the water, and that's the most we'll mess with, just because once they get tangled, it kind of ruins things for a little bit. But there's guys that, they'll load up and they'll have 14, 15, 16 rods out, but that's just not our style. We're not that good at not tangling them up. But so we'll just run, and we'll use our electronics to try to find. Side scan has been huge since side imaging came out. But we'll just run and try to figure out roughly where the fish are that time of year, and put our spreads out and wait for one to grab on. But then we do, typically in the summertime, we'll do what's called downlining. And that's where, like, you've got roughly a 2-ounce weight, and you'll cruise around, you'll find fish on your graph, and you can just hit spot lock on that trolling motor, or just stop the boat and kind of drift in that area and drop straight down on top of that school of fish that you see with the 2-ounce weight. And same kind of concept. We've got roughly 4 lines out maybe when we're doing that, maybe 5 or 6 depending. But it's a blast. And the pound for pound fight, they're so much fun.
Oh yeah. They're aggressive, mean fish when you got one hooked on, which is awesome. How deep are they typically when you're doing the downlining?
In the summertime, Lanier's a pretty deep lake. It's not at all uncommon in the summer when the water's coolest down at the bottom, and they're looking for that relief from the hot Georgia sun. Maybe 120 feet. 80, 70 to 120, but probably that 80-ish foot is I would say kind of the sweet spot. And full disclosure, I'm not a numbers person. I'm very much guilty of just getting out there and not winging it. You always have a plan, but I'm not the best, data keeper.
Right.
So you need to get better at that. But, it's just kind of that approximate range. And you can tell, once you're over a school with the graph, you can see where they are in the water column. And so then at that point, the name of the game is kind of just dropping it right above them, or right amongst them. And so the graphs help out a lot. I guess it's kind of like the, Google Maps and GPS that you've got on your phone, where I couldn't tell you how to drive somewhere anymore because I just do what my phone tells me to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotten spoiled.
Do you have out here on Percy Priest? So, we do have the hybrids as well, but one fun time of year is whenever they just start hitting the surface like crazy, and we just watch for the birds, and, zoom over there as fast as we can and just throw like a spoon or really almost anything you can throw, and you're going to get fish. And a lot of times they're not going to be huge fish, but it's still a ton of fun.
They're a blast.
Does that happen out there as well?
It does. We totally chase the birds here as well. Watch for the seagulls to come through. And, now's a good time. We're getting into a great topwater time for Lanier. The fish are coming up shallow. So we use one of my favorites. We'll throw bucktail jigs at them. Captain Mac that I had mentioned before, he's got a great line of striper fishing products. So we'll throw some of his jigs at him. He's got a little mini Mac A-rig kind of set up that if you've got a grouping of them, that's a great tool to throw out there. And, but we'll also use just a bone spook. That's hands down my favorite topwater lure is just a good old Zara spook, in that bone color, and kind of do the walk the dog pattern across with them. And so there's nothing like that topwater bite. It's hands down my favorite fishing, whether it's some type of bass fishing, whether we're floating the rivers on just a hot summer day for brim or whatever we can get to bite on the kayaks. I'm throwing something top water, and I want to see the splashing.
Yeah. There's nothing I'll never forget the first time I caught my first bass top water. That thing, I'd gone out one afternoon, and I had, it was a popper, topwater popper. And I was like, I am going to catch a fish on this. And afternoon's not really the time typically to catch fish, a bass topwater, but I was just bound and determined. And so I was out there for a couple hours probably just casting that thing and working it back to the boat. And I'll never forget that bass came up out of nowhere and attacked that thing. And I was like, yes. And I was like, okay, I finally get bass fishing now.
Yep. That's where I struggle with the patience to do the real slow, rubber worms and some of the drop shots and things like that, where you just got to be super patient and almost painfully slow. I struggle with that. Like, I want to be zipping something across the water or high up in the water column or watching it move across top water. But with that, I mean, I'll bass fish all day long for that anticipation and just waiting for it to come up and hit it. There's nothing like it.
Oh yeah. See, I love that, but I'm also very much a finesse angler. I love to just slow work a Senko back to the boat. So
I got to work on it. I've got it as a personal goal where I need to just go out and make myself do it and make myself get good at it. You can't see it. So I'm always up in my head, like, am I doing this right? Why isn't anything biting?
Have you fished
get that instant gratification?
Have you fished the Ned rig much?
I have not. That's one that I've started working on, and I've had some success with it. But it's just I'm a very visual learner, visual person. Like, if I can't see something, I'd struggle to, I guess really learn it or feel confident in it. But it's, like with anything, you just got to practice and get good at it. And I've just got to make myself practice and get good at it and build that confidence.
Yep. There you go. Well, and I wanted to touch too, because you guys get out there and do some saltwater fishing. And that's something that I've really taken to in the last couple years, getting to go down to Florida and stuff like that. So how often do you get out there and get out in the saltwater?
We joke for sure this past year, we saltwater fished more than we freshwater fished. And we live on the lake. But we, in a normal year, I mean, I would say we're down there 6 or 7 times a year, whether it be for a couple long weekends. We've usually got 2 full week periods that we'll go, and then piecing together some 4-day weekends at the opening of snapper season or grouper, and just trying to get down there as much as we can, because it's a little mini break from work and kind of the daily life too. So we love it. But any chance we can, and just trying to hone in those skills and just get better at catching different things down there too.
And where do you typically like to go?
We go anywhere we typically stay in the Panhandle, along the Alabama-Florida coast. So we'll go over to Fort Morgan, Alabama, which is kind of the Gulf Shores area, but it's on a little peninsula that sticks out in the Mobile Bay. We'll fish a lot out of Fort Morgan, with the oil rigs. And then they've got a great, artificial reef program, more or less, where there's a lot of wrecks and bridges and pilings and just fantastic snapper habitats out there. You won't find as many grouper because they don't have the same rocky bottom that Florida has. But the snapper fishing out there is awesome. And then they've got the shipping channel there where you'll get these massive cargo ships that anchor up, I'm going to say maybe 18, 20 miles offshore, waiting to get into port. And the cobia love hanging out around those big ships after they've been anchored up for a few days. So that's kind of our Fort Morgan thing, is for snapper, cobia. You can get some nice amberjacks and stuff out there as well. And then we'll go, usually far east, it's about Carabel, Florida.
Okay.
Right there getting into the bend. But probably Fort Morgan, Port St. Joe, and Carabel have been the places that we've gone most often the past 2 years.
Very cool. I love that area, the Apalachicola area and St. George Island and all that. So
yeah, it's beautiful.
So very cool. Well, we didn't get into this, but how did you first get into fishing to begin with? Only child and daughter of an outdoorsman. Okay. So my dad, growing up, very big into hunting. Fishing wasn't so much something that he did consistently, but he enjoyed it.
So he and I would just go hit up some banks and local farm ponds, and fish. And so that's where I started doing it at a young age. And he tells me this story, and I've got a picture of it actually that I might find and see if I can share with you.
Yeah.
But one of the first fish that I caught, I think I was probably 4, maybe 5. And I'd reeled in this big, it was either a catfish or a carp. I think it was a catfish. But I wanted to keep it. I was just hell bent on keeping this fish, and we typically would catch and release, or maybe he'd keep some stuff. But I took it home, but I didn't want him to fillet it. Like, this was my fish. And so after about 2 days, I think of it hanging out on the porch because I would not let him get rid of it. The story he told me was that a dog came up and ran off with it. I've got this picture of I'm like some little blonde-haired, scraggly-looking kid holding up this fish that was from about to the floor to my chest at the time. And so that was one of my early fishing pictures. But so got into it with my dad and just doing the bank fishing. Mm-hmm. And then in college, I met my husband, Drew, and he was really into fishing. And at that point, most of my experience had been from a bank and just hanging out with friends. But he had gotten into striper fishing and grew up bass fishing. He and his father had a bass boat, so that kind of became our date thing. We would just do that on the weekends, and that became really, that's like all we do. We're either working on something house related or we're out fishing. Nice. So that's really been our kind of couples thing in common interest.
Very cool. Well, what do you think you love most about it?
About
fishing,
just fishing in general? I think it's just the challenge. I'm really competitive. Mm-hmm. So I grew up playing sports, and then just with the fishing, it's like that competitive drive. I don't do the tournaments, so I'm not really competitive in that sense. But just one-off, like, personal competition. Like, I want to find a fish. I want to catch a fish on a lure that somebody's going to tell me this isn't the time of year to catch it on that, or you're not going to do that here. I'm like, oh yeah, watch me. Yeah. But then just, trying to find that new personal best, and just it really is that kind of even playing field for people. Do a little bit of work on what you're doing, figure out the area, learning their habits and their patterns, and just going out there and trying to find them. And I would say probably the favorite, one of the single favorite things is just, it's getting away. You're not on your phone. If you're out fishing, the electronics are more or less put to the side for that period of time. So you can really just disconnect from it. And even if it's not a great fishing day, and I know this is really cliche, but it's a good day out on the water. Mm-hmm. You're seeing things and experiencing things that, others would love to be doing in that moment.
Yeah.
So just taking a step back and taking it all in.
And do you have a preference over kayak fishing or fishing from a boat?
They both have their place. Mm-hmm. I will say, with the boat, it's of course fantastic to just be able to hop on and very quickly get to wherever you want to go. It could be miles away on the water, and it's reachable by the boat. But with the kayak, it's just, I got into kayak fishing about 6 years ago pretty heavily. And it's just such a different experience. I mean, you're close to the water. You're right there with the fish and the action that's going on. You've got to make these subtle changes in how you net a fish, how you cast. And you can creep up on nature a lot better in a kayak. I mean, we'll go out and there's deer on the bank 30 yards from you. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, kayak fishing definitely has a special place in my heart. Since we've gotten into it, and just the kayaking community is amazing, but so is the boating community. They're very different. Mm-hmm. So I definitely, I don't foresee picking one over the other anytime soon.
Gotcha. Well, and you mentioned personal best. What's your personal best striper?
I call it my birthday fish. It was about 2 years ago, and it was the day after my birthday, and it was about a mile upriver from where we live. And it was I don't have the pounds on it, but it was a 38 3/4 inches striper, which is a citation fish for Georgia.
Nice.
So it was long and skinny. It didn't have the belly on it. But gotcha. It was, that's my PB striper. Nice. And then, Drew caught his PB last March, the same general area. And I know his was over 30 pounds on a boga grip.
Nice.
But it was, so Mine was longer though.
There you go. Well, I want to touch on you are involved in a annual tournament called Maggie's Dream Striper Tournament, and just recently happened. I guess you weren't able to do it in 2020, and so this year it was like a record-breaking event. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Team Maggie's Dream is an organization that, is really near and dear to me. I grew up with Maggie. She and I played ball together growing up, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 24. And just through going through learning about treatment and the impacts that it can have on your body and your fertility, as a woman, going through all of that, she and her mom rather found that fertility preservation is something that oftentimes isn't discussed with young adults getting ready to start their cancer process or cancer treatments. But it's extremely costly. It's about $7,000 probably on average. But if you don't do it, the chances of you having a child after cancer, at least biologically, it goes down tremendously. So, and insurance doesn't cover those procedures. So Team Maggie's Dream started up through Maggie's own journey, and she's great. She's cancer free, and she actually has a 5-year-old little girl now. 5-year-old little girl now named Laylee. But Team Maggie's Dream was something that her mom really started up to where we raise money and we award grants to young men and women, really at the start of their cancer journey, to help offset some of those costs of the fertility preservation. And we've been really, really fortunate here. I started up the tournament, I guess 6 years ago now, as a fundraising effort for us. I was the board chair for the organization and just looking for ways to bring in money. And our local striper fishing community here on Lake Lanier really got behind us. And so we've had a great turnout from year one. But this past year, we called it the one that we just wrapped up last weekend, we called it the 5th/6th annual Team Maggie's Dream Striper Tournament because, we couldn't do it with COVID, unfortunately. But we had 64 boats that entered the tournament, which is big for a striper tournament around here. I mean, we just don't bring the guys at the crowds that the bass tournaments do. Typically, it's a different audience that's fishing. But we had 64 boats, which beat our last 4th annual that we actually got to have by 12 boats. We had 52 in that one. And then we actually, after all was said and done expense-wise, we raised about $11,000.
Nice.
And so between these events combined, we've brought in about $50,000 for Team Maggie that have all gone straight back into funding these grants. We're a volunteer organization. So any money that comes in goes right back out into applicants. And since we started doing that in 2016, we've been able to award 175 grants.
Wow. And
we're based out of Georgia, but they are nationwide. So we've helped people from California, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey. So it's really cool to see the impact and helping people kind of keep that hope alive of, I will and I can beat this cancer, and there's hope for a future and a family for me after. So it's been a really, kind of uplifting thing to be a part of, but also just being there for people that are going through a really tough time, and making you grateful for what you have, but also grateful for the ability to help and make a difference for them. Yeah. And we definitely couldn't do that without our local fishing community and shops that have contributed to that event.
That's great. And I was, when I was preparing for our conversation today and reading about the tournament, that's just an issue that I never really thought of before. So, it is, seems like something that's not really talked about as much as it should be.
Yeah, it was new to me too. Whenever, Maggie going through her stuff, I mean, we're the same age, and you tend to think of cancer affecting, maybe your aunts and your uncles or older parents. It's just, I think most people don't really associate it as much with young adults. But, I've got a handful of friends that have gone through it, and it's like, wait, this isn't supposed to be happening to us. We're young. But it's just, it's life. And we hear a lot about children's cancers, and there's a lot of support for that. But then as you get into that, kind of reproductive stage where you're looking to start a family, the impact. So like with children, they're not really at a reproductive stage yet. So the impacts of their ability to conceive afterwards, I'm not so heavy on, they call it oncofertility. Oncofertility is kind of the practice that specializes in that. And so I'm not as familiar with it on the children's side, but particularly with the, teens and young adults in that reproductive period, the impacts of it are huge. And it really isn't something that even doctors have started pushing and making patients aware of until probably the last 10 years or so. And we've seen a big uptick in that. And we're actually I know for a while we were the only 501c3 that was doing this, that was pursuing the fertility grants across the country. And now there may be, maybe there's 2 or 3, but it's this growing area where people are seeing the need for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, very cool. And I'm looking at the results here from the tournament. So how does that work? So it's 2 fish that people can, and do you guys do it like I'm not familiar, I guess, with striper tournaments. Is there like a weigh-in, like a bass tournament, or how does that work?
Similar, but very different. So with striper fishing, you're dealing with larger fish, so they're not going to fit in your live well, generally. So we do catch, photo, release tournaments. Okay, cool. So we try to be very conservation minded in that. And basically all of the boats will have, we use Check-It sticks, are probably the most common brand that gets used, but these big metal measuring boards. And so the day of the tournament or the event, the organizer will send out a tournament identifier that will usually, which is common in like kayak bass tournaments too, where you've got a number that has to be present in all pictures to confirm that picture that fish was caught on that day. But they'll just lay the fish out on the board and take a whole fish picture with the length and kind of showing us that it's legit with that identifier in there. And then for the weigh-in piece, the captains or the anglers will just bring in pictures on their cell phone and show their 2 longest fish. Is the format that we do, is we do a two fish tournament. So the winners are determined by total length of those fish. Gotcha. But once the fish gets caught, they get measured and typically they're going right back in the water.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I love to hear that, because I know these big fish get, pretty stressed and whatnot. So that's good.
Yeah, and it takes them a long time to get big. So we want to put them back so they can keep growing.
Well, cool. Do you have anything coming up that you want to talk about?
Oh, goodness. Nothing big. We're just looking forward to being able to get out on the water. We've timed possibly a life change right in the midst of primetime fishing season, and that we're putting our house on the market and possibly going to be building. Okay. So that's got a big question mark as to our plans for the next couple of months. But we'll absolutely be heading down, taking advantage of some opening seasons in Florida and Alabama, and no big events though, really. I'm looking forward to ICAST this year. Interested to see what that's going to be like, and excited to get back down there, hopefully in July.
Yeah, my plans are still up in the air for ICAST, but if I can make it down there, I would love to be there. So hopefully I can. I mean, it's a pretty quick. I've got all these airline miles built up now.
Hey, you can throw some my way. Yeah. We'll go find somewhere to fish together.
Sure. Yeah, no. Well, last time I was down there, takemefishing.org, I was supposed to go out and fish the Disney lakes. They had a drawing and I won. And then they called me and they said, hey, this little girl, she won and her parents need to come with her. Would you mind giving up your spot? And I was like, oh man, I was so looking forward to that, but okay. And so they said,
Angie, you're out.
Yeah. So they said, next time you come down, we'll hook you up. So that would be awesome to be able to do that, but
for sure
we'll see. And I definitely want to get to Lake Lanier and get with you and Captain Mac and do some fishing out there. And so we need to figure out when a good time for that would be, but that'd be awesome.
Hey, the fish are here year round, so
Awesome.
just come on down. I'll get you in a kayak too while you're here.
Well, and I have very little experience kayak fishing. I got to take a Hobie out on, I was out of La Jolla in California and went out and did some halibut fishing from a kayak in the ocean, which was cool. It was crazy. I'm not quite coordinated enough to to do all that,
we'll do some slower pace to
Yeah.
get you up in the north end for we'll do some bass fishing.
There you
Nothing
go.
too crazy.
Very cool. All right. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you so much. Please send that picture if you can find it. I would love to share that with the listeners, and I will share your socials and all of that on the show notes for this episode. And just thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know we're all crazy busy, and it's early, but I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on and letting me chat.
All right. Thanks, everyone, once again for tuning in to this week's episode of the podcast. If it was your first time, I hope you come back and maybe go back and check out some of the previous episodes. We've had some really great ones. This has been so much fun, and I plan to keep this going for as long as I possibly can because I just love it. And don't forget about the Women's World of Fishing Monday Night Lives that I'm doing with Barbara Harris every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. Those stream out live on my personal Facebook page, Barbara's personal Facebook, and now the Woman Angler and Adventurer page and group, and our YouTube channels. So pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to be able to access these Monday Night Live shows, and it's been so much fun thus far. We're working on making it more interactive for everybody, but it's a blast. So hope you're checking those out. There's always the replays on our socials and YouTube channels as well. So lots going on. Lots of exciting things happening in 2021. Can't wait to see where it goes as always. Thank you so much for listening and for your support and leaving ratings and reviews on your favorite podcast platform. It all makes a big difference. And I will see you right back here next week.